New design of Lawrence High School, which I like to refer to this a little bit as what is going to be a transformation of that school. First of all, and what you're going to see tonight is really some really cool stuff. Obviously, it's just up on paper right now, but when the physical product is done, it's going to be quite impressive. This is really what I also would consider to be the preeminent project for the 2017 bond. It's kind of the showcase item. In the end, it'll probably be around $50 million with all the construction and the soft costs included. When you think about that relative to the 2013 bond, that's like taking Cordley, Sunset Hill, Hillcrest, Pinckney, and rolling it all into one. And so it's pretty complex. It's taking an older facility that's had a lot of different additions and turning into something that maybe makes a little more sense and is certainly more of a 21st century design. So this has been a fun challenge for the team. Fun in quotation marks sometimes, but you know, it's the same group that's been on the Free State project. Gould Evans Architects is the lead on this. So you're going to hear from Kelly Dreer here in just a second, who's been a primary person with the design, along with Whitney Lang, who's out in the audience. And so they're working in tandem with Henderson Engineers again. Doug Everhart has been a primary person on the design team with that. Luke Dietz is here representing McCown Gordon, and he has a whole host of other people that's working with him behind the scenes. So it's been a good team. Also, I want to make sure that I recognize Lawrence High School administration. Matt Brungart, Mike Norris have put a lot of time into this, made themselves available for a lot of meetings, and that's all on top of their regular job. We also have a full committee of about 15 people, half a dozen teachers, a couple classified staff members, several parents who have been involved with the planning for the project. We've had meetings that have been ongoing every couple weeks at least. No more than a month has transpired since September when we've met with this group. The other thing that happens with the high school design, especially something that it's this complex, is that we meet, and Whitney in particular meets and sits down with all the different specialized groups. So, you know, you sit down and you meet with PE and athletics, you meet with the fine arts folks, you meet with performing arts, you meet with all the CTE programs and special education programs. And so it's not just, you know, the core teachers that you're talking with all these other specialized teachers also, because, you know, what they do in their classrooms is oftentimes very unique in its unique space. And so one of the things we're really trying to do is provide flexible classrooms that can be used for a lot of different functions, because we don't know what, you know, education is going to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But you still have to provide some specialized space for folks so they can do the job that we want them to do. So thank you to those folks. Without question, people are very passionate about this project, which also makes it a lot of fun, because people want what's best for the school, and so you can't go wrong when that's your starting point. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly here, and Kelly's going to walk through quite a few slides and images and such, and then at the end you have the opportunity to ask some questions and get some clarification on some things. So here we go.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Dreer. I'm a designer with Gould Evans. As Kyle said, I've got several other members of my team here, along with McCown Gordon, so we'd be happy to answer questions afterwards. But we're really excited to be a part of this process, and we're just getting into the construction documents phase of this project, and so we have a lot of design that we're going to review with you today. We want to quickly review some of the goals, those including the goals that go back to the master plan. I'll speak briefly about the level of engagement that we've encountered throughout this project. We'll talk about a new building diagram and conceptual development for the project as it relates to both the building and the site. We want to review the furniture pilot with you. That's something that we have reviewed with you relative to Free State High School. It's a very similar process, but it's been a very informative one that's been very inclusive as well. We'll touch on sustainability and wellness, and then we'll end with the schedule and budget for this project. I did want to just walk through a few of the key existing components of the school because that's what's driven the master plan goals that we had set up early in the design process. This project is composed of 15 different additions or major renovations that have occurred over time. With none of those additions or renovations have there been the opportunity to really take all the pieces out of the box and put them back together. So this has really been kind of the first opportunity to create a cohesive school with the parts that they have today. So it's a great opportunity for Lawrence High School. Also, as a part of the 2013 bond effort, there's a secure entry at the school, but they still have most of their doors open throughout the day. And so you can see this diagram just shows the points of entry that are open throughout campus. One of our primary initiatives is just creating a safe and secure building throughout the regular operational hours of the building. This is just a snapshot of the corridors throughout the school. This is very typical of the typology of the time. It wasn't really respective of the sustainable principles that we abide by today. And it's also not taking into account that a lot of the learning that takes place is learning that's occurring in secondary learning environments like the corridors, where you're sending students from the classroom to these other environments. So turning these into transformational and educational spaces has been primary. And finally, of course, the classrooms. Because of those 12 different additions, we have classrooms that range from 400 square feet to 800 square feet for the general core education classrooms. Creating a standard for those classrooms has been a critical part of this process. So those really feed again into the master plan goals, and I'll just highlight those quickly. One was creating 21st century learning environments, accommodating a growing student population, and specifically we are creating an environment that accounted for 2,000 students, providing a safe and secure campus, accommodating student privacy, creating equity across the district, and specifically with Free State High School, and then strategic MEP and system upgrades, which I'll highlight at the end of this show. The level of engagement has been pretty deep throughout both district administrators, faculty, students, and staff. I won't go through each of these in details, but we've had multiple touchstones, and we're continuing to touch base with many of these even as we progress through construction documents. One of the primary groups, perhaps most informative, have just been the touchstones that we've had with the student population and with the faculty. The students, there were a few key takeaways that I wanted to highlight. One in particular is simply that we had an excellent turnout. We had almost half the students respond to this survey, so we feel like we had a good representation of the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors that go to school there. And there really were 4 questions that we received feedback on that fed directly into the solutions that we provided for the school. One was when we asked, what is your teaching and learning preference? Most students highlighted that it was a collaborative and learning environment for which they felt most comfortable. This goes tandem with everything that we know about education and our expertise, and that became a highlight of many of the spaces that you'll see throughout this presentation. A second was we asked, where do you consider the heart of the school to be? And you can see that the majority of students answered gym, athletics, cafeteria. We asked ourselves, is there a way to highlight some of the more academic programs? The third, what best describes how you use the library? And our response was, how can the Media Center become a space that supports the needs of 21st century students? Currently, it's a space that there's a lot of studying that happens, but we believe that there's many other resources that can be a part of that particular program. And how often do you use your academic locker? So we see a direct, or I should say indirect correlation with the integration of the one-to-one devices with the school compared to the use of lockers. And so that's gradually decreasing every year and has even decreased since our initial surveys that we did back in the master planning phase. What this means is that those lockers take up valuable real estate, and that's real estate that we can give to learning space, and you'll see how we've started to transform some of the locker locations to learning environments within the plan. The faculty survey outcomes resulted in a few outcomes that I'd like to highlight relative to sustainability and wellness. It was whether or not we could create a health and wellness center that starts to consolidate the various health and wellness athletics components of the school to create a more robust program that accentuates those particular goals. Relative to sustainability, daylight, and outdoor learning, we asked ourselves, is there some way to get 100% daylighting or daylighting to 100% of the core classroom stock within the school? Regarding CTE, media, art, and makerspace, whether we could make this a more accessible media center, can CTE or career and technical education be front and center, and how can hands-on learning be front and center for the school as well? These fed into a new diagram for the school. And this has 5 primary components. The first, and probably the most important component that's anchoring the school is a new innovation district. We see this as a new central resource that connects core classrooms to hands-on opportunities in robotics, video production, art, journalism, makerspaces, and career and technical education. This is a particularly transformative space that's very transparent and begins to take disparate hands-on spaces that are spread throughout the facility and consolidate them in one location. The second move was to create a consolidated wellness and athletic district that consolidates programs that speak to the related initiatives of health, wellness, nutrition, and fitness. The third was to create open media, or a resource that expands upon those in the innovation district to the south and also extends the flexibility and function of the dining commons to the west. And it would also be a space that starts to incorporate a myriad of different opportunities, ranging from quiet space to a student success center that's very similar to what you would see at the collegiate level, open study environments, a Genius Bar similar to what you'd see at an Apple store where you can get IT help, and a project center for self-directed learning. The fourth was expanding the courtyard, so there's a fairly extensive courtyard arrangement within the existing facility, but currently there's classrooms that front those that don't necessarily benefit, and they are also embedding other classrooms that mean that those classrooms don't get daylight. So we've expanded those courtyards, and you'll see in a moment how we've flipped the circulation patterns to benefit from that daylighting. And here you can see some examples of how we would be providing daylighting adjacent to major circulation paths, and also daylighting to courtyards. And the last is just creating a clear wayfinding. Again, this goes back to the 12 additions in the school, and one of the responses from students was just having the lack of a clear sense of wayfinding throughout Lawrence High. So one of our goals was just to reestablish that clear wayfinding to create a unified school district. And the last was one campus. And again, this goes back to the multiple entries. So we've done this in really 3 strategic ways. One was creating gates that begin to partition off the west courtyard and create a learning environment out of that courtyard. That would be closed during regular school hours. We created a classroom addition to the annex to the south so that those 2 buildings are connected on both levels 1 and 2. And then we created a covered entry from the main building over to the natatorium and west gym. So concept development. So this just goes through the pieces of those 5 to 6 different ideas that I shared before. So looking at the innovation district, this was based on some research that is very common in K through 12 education. The first of which is that the majority of today's grad school students will end up in jobs that don't even exist today. That means that they are needing to employ a skill set that's transversal, that can apply to many different disciplines, and that isn't necessarily rooted only in core curriculum. And when we seek into exactly what that means, we look at research that asks what employers are seeking within these graduates. And you can see that for the most part, they're looking for soft skills, or again, those transversal skills. That's cognitive ability, the ability to communicate in groups, general curiosity, rigor within the workplace. We see these in general core classrooms, these skill sets, but we also see these highlighted most importantly within those hands-on environments. And that's why we've started to take those various hands-on programs that are usually pushed to the periphery of the school and highlight those within the center of the school. So this is an example of where those hands-on programs exist today. And this is the consolidation of those hands-on programs in the new diagram. So zooming up on those spaces, they consist primarily of Woods and Metals program, art programs, and media. You'll see that those are juxtaposed against core classroom that we have in the existing classroom bar. And then joining those two areas is an area that we're calling a learning commons. This is where core classrooms and those innovation programs meet, or where you have interdisciplinary learning that joins multiple classrooms. And then we've created a new primary circulation spine that moves directly adjacent to that innovation district. And these areas have 8 primary goals. One was to integrate the arts with STEM, to replicate the workplace, to promote opportunities for connections across various disciplines, to create a maker ethos, to treat and support faculty as professionals, to cater to authentic audiences, or those audiences within the workplace, to engage community partners, and generally create a vibe of a venture accelerator. Basically creating a much more professional environment that's much more akin to what they'll see in the workplace. And some of those environments are really composed of 3 different types of areas: large studios, smaller studios, as well as a career and technical education shop that again is serving woods and welding. And these are some renderings that we have looking at Lawrence High School in particular. So this is located within that innovation district, looking to the south. And so those are innovation classrooms to the east. So those are art classrooms, maker classrooms, and breakout spaces to the left. And then again, this corridor has been resituated to be directly adjacent to the courtyards that they have today. And so that daylight from the courtyards is directly serving this particular circulation spine. This is a view from one of those typical studios looking toward the courtyards. So we're providing daylight through that circulation spine to these classrooms, providing indirect daylighting. And then again, creating a learning commons that begins to tie this program directly to the core classrooms. And what it's composed of is really 2 components. One is a project center, so that's for self-directed learning from students, student projects that they have that are either a part of their classroom programs or maybe students that, or projects that they're taking on their own, as well as a learning commons, which is a larger space of 2,000 square feet or more for interdisciplinary learning, presentations, all staff meetings, testing, really to serve a multitude of different opportunities that the school may have. And this is a view toward that learning commons and project center from the innovations corridor. And this is a view looking from the learning commons and project center. Basically a very flexible environment that allows for multiple furniture arrangements. The extended courtyard, so the 3 that you're seeing lower on the page are generally existing today, and the larger square one to the north is a new one that we're adding. And that's really to get daylighting deeper into the school. It's to connect it to the main commons, so you engage with that daylit space when you immediately come in the front door. That is the door to the northwest of the school. And also to help provide daylighting to 100% of the 100% of the core classrooms. And this is a view within those courtyards showing that we're looking for opportunities to engage those spaces where it's appropriate. One of those opportunities will be exterior dining, as well as some select areas for classroom pullout, so an area that would accommodate 30 students or more. The media commons, so this is an image of the media commons today. And one thing that we're striving to do is begin to create, again, more resources within this environment. And one way that we're doing that is connecting that to some other major spaces to engage it for more hours of the day. We're connecting it to the main dining commons to the west, as well as to a new east entry on the east side that connects to the bus pickup and drop-off zones. And this is a view looking down. And really, this is at the nexus of administration, which is directly adjacent to the main front secure entry, as well as a new student success center and the the expanded courtyards to the south. And you can see on the right side of the screen a new east entry that we're creating that's in line with this program. We're also creating what you'll see in some renderings to follow a two-story space within the media commons that connects to the second floor classroom bar. So that's a way that we are engaging those classrooms on the second floor to some of these resources on first floor. And we're doing that through both a circulation stair as well as what we're calling a learning stair, or a place where students can either hang out or have groups of students within learning capacity. And this is the breakdown of that media commons, creating a general classroom setting for 30 students, general stacks, pitch space, or an area for students to present, quiet study, and then everywhere that I've just mentioned will be in an area that can be secured after hours, and then there'll be some select open study and reading materials that will be within an open environment as well. Under that two-story space, under the learning stair will be breakout rooms as well. And this is a view from the main entry looking east. That's the learning stair and egress stair in red. And one thing that we've tried to do with color is to highlight spaces where there's collaborative environments. So that learning stair, as well as the pitch space at the top of that stair, become collaborative opportunities for either the media to use or for classrooms to use. As you saw in the innovation commons, there's various red boxes kind of along that corridor. Those are pull-out spaces or conference rooms as well for students to use. So we tried to create a design language that allows students to read the building and its various functions. To the right is that expanded courtyard that leads to the Innovations District. And this is just a view looking north toward the interior of the library. The classrooms and breakout. So this is a view of a typical corridor today. And again, as we mentioned, the lockers became an opportunity for us to take some of that real estate and convert it to usable learning environments. So starting with the classroom, we wanted to create a consistent classroom stock. And being equitable with Free State High School, that's a 720 square foot classroom. We believe this to accommodate 30 students in a capacity that's more in keeping with the type of engagement that we would see in 21st century learning models. And then expanding on that, creating several more opportunities for what we call student pull-out, or opportunities where you can have small groups of students move from the classroom to other learning environments. Two specifically are enclosed, what are more or less conference rooms, and that's the area that's highlighted in blue. That has some visibility both from the classrooms and from the corridor, so it can be used by either those classrooms or other classrooms along the corridor, as well as a front porch space, which is directly adjacent to the main corridor, so it's collaborative space but open to the corridor. And then you can see in this diagram that we've created a variety of different size breakout rooms that serve 4 to 8 students, and they serve between 2 and 4 classrooms, depending on their size. So no more than 4 classrooms would share any one of those particular environments. And then that front porch space, to the extent that the existing limitations would allow, we've created that as a continuation along the entire length of the corridor system. So every classroom has some front porch space adjacent to it. And this is just an example of what that might look like. So again, the more collaborative spaces or enclosed collaborative environments are highlighted in color. And then we see the rest of the hallway being widened, taking up some of the real estate from the lockers, and that giving an area for classroom or for student pullout and whiteboards to be within that corridor system. So again, we're creating secondary learning environments along the primary corridor system. Moving to the to all gender facilities and their arrangement throughout the school, we've really created 2 different types of clusters. One is all gender restrooms that will be employed the day that the building opens, as well as what we're calling all gender ready restrooms later. So those are basically restrooms that could be easily changed to an all gender situation in the future. The main office and Student Success Center, so again, that's toward the north of the building. The main office will reside where it currently does today. In fact, there's relatively minor renovations to that area because the 2013 bond effort had touched that space. However, one critical initiative that we're doing as a part of this bond effort is we're relocating the student center or student success spaces directly adjacent to that main administration area so that they can communicate. Performing arts toward the very north of the building. There are many different renovations that are happening to this space that include an enlarged orchestra room, new lighting in corridors and classrooms, the ventilation for the scene shop and dressing rooms, auditorium electrical upgrades, dressing room remodels, replacement of auditorium house lighting, dedicated storage for choir robes and sheet music, choir room improvements to the teaching wall. We've relocated the practice rooms, and we're locating those within the old black box. So as a part of the 2013 bond effort, there was a new black box theater that was created, and we are repurposing the old black box to serve as both practice rooms and as a instrument storage facility that's shared by the other three primary music programs. And then there will also be corridor finish upgrades as well that tie into the rest of the school. Specialized special education classrooms. There are really two components to this. So there is the specialized special education that includes autism, function, and medically fragile. Those are located toward the south end of the school, and they have they're a dedicated SPED corridor system. This is very similar to the arrangement that was employed for Free State High School and was worked out with various district members. And then there are also specialized classrooms such as ESL, ED, gifted, and adaptive that are spread out throughout the rest of the school on both floors 1 and 2. The Wellness and Athletic District, again, is consolidated to the west end of the school. So this includes some of the traditional athletic programs, but this also includes various wellness classrooms that were distributed elsewhere, and so we tried to consolidate those into one location. So that's the area in green. Some of the primary things to point out is a new logic to the location and function of the locker rooms, which have been a part of a multi-stage renovation that have occurred over the years. And so we are relocating all of those locker rooms to the south side of the main gym. That includes both gym lockers and athletic lockers. And then also the relocation and right sizing of the weights and cardio programs. And again, those are very similar to what we're doing at Free State as well. So this is a blow-up of the athletic and PE locker rooms. And then we're also creating a coach's locker suite and offices, as well as all gender locker rooms, and this is directly adjacent to the existing main gymnasium. Some other miscellaneous upgrades that we are employing is a new elevator to the north side of the main gymnasium, and that's to create accessibility to two new accessible viewing platforms for wheelchair access on that second floor. And then as we move over to the west gym and natatorium, we are creating an addition on the east side of the natatorium to increase seating capacity and also located above the floor level so that to improve upon the existing view angles and to increase the deck space, or what's also known as the crash space for swimmers. So site development, a few things to touch on, specifically as it relates to the west courtyard. We are generally trying to create a learning environment that begins to tie the facility together, particularly the main building and the west gymnasium and natatorium. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, that will be confined by a new gate system that will be on the north and south sides of that courtyard. We're creating a covered entry from the main building to the natatorium. And this is an example of what that will look like. The furniture and technology pilot, so that's currently occurring within English, science, math, and history. So we have 4 classrooms that we're looking at. And the things that we're testing through this pilot are technology, lighting, flooring, paint, furniture systems. So we've set that up over spring break, I think it was, and allowing both students and faculty to test that out and to get their feedback. And as a part of this follow-up, we've also been visiting various benchmark of peer institutions, as well as visiting furniture vendors with the district to understand what the options are regarding those spaces. So just a few of the upgrades that are being evaluated is the LED lighting systems that were included as a part of the master plan effort, refreshing paint color, looking at various technology solutions, evaluating carpet solutions, and of course looking at flexibility of furniture. So I won't go through the details of that, but we're at the point where faculty and students have started to make their selections. So we're going through those and starting to vet those from a durability standpoint and function standpoint. And just a few of the key takeaways that we've heard from both students and faculty alike is the height adjustable and swivel chairs were well received. Teachers like tiered tables, students like the whiteboard tops on their general writing surfaces. Mobility and reconfiguration is highly desired. Adjustable lighting, and also 75-inch flat panel monitors was preferred as kind of the primary communication tool versus using the whiteboard or projection screens as the primary tool. So, all classrooms are currently slated to have that flat panel monitor with, I think it's 3 whiteboards. From sustainability and wellness standpoint, we're still employing the priorities that were in place during the master planning effort, but I just wanted to highlight a few of those. The steam boiler replacement, variable speed pumps, still targeting 35% interior lighting power reduction. So one thing that these various initiatives are leading to is we don't believe that the energy costs of the school will go up even with the additions that we're making and improvements that we're making to the school. And then Luke's going to come up and speak a little bit about schedule and budget.
Thanks, Kelly. Good evening. I'm Luke Dietz with McCown Gordon, and thank you for letting us speak with you tonight. But I just wanted to real briefly give you an update on schedule and budget. As you can imagine, the schedule associated with Lawrence High is fairly complex. So when we're going through and renovating a large high school while kids are there, there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces. And so fundamentally, our thought process has really focused on maintaining the learning environment and student safety. And so when we talk about that, that really leads to the factors that you see on the screen with making sure we have a consistent classroom count, that we're working with Matt and Mike to ensure that we've got the right classrooms in the right places, that we've got great separation between construction and students while we're in session, while school's in session. And that means that access from the construction team to get into the location is separate from the students as well. We've really got to be mindful to make sure that we've got strong egress routing in the event there is an emergency during the school. As you can imagine, as students transition from one area in the school, that may change through the course of a project. We've got to make sure those routes are well defined for them. Communicate how and keep our transition between major phases at your typical breaks, so Christmas break being an example. And then consideration of programs that may be relocated to other district facilities. So we're right in the thick of this sort of evolution from a schedule perspective. We continue to meet on a regular basis with Gould Evans and Kyle and team to make sure we're making the right decisions through the process. But we do expect this to take another several months to vet through. From an overall time frame, we'll bid the project in October, and then construction, as we're still finalizing phasing and the actual start date, it will start in 19 and complete in 2021. And then just from a high level budget perspective, construction dollars right about $42.5 million, furniture and equipment at about $2.6 million, and then technology being audio visual and some IT components about $750,000.
All right. So this is the board's opportunity to ask any questions or clarifications or follow-up. Rick?
Yeah, I have a question. You just mentioned the audio visual. Exactly what does that entail? If you get a little more detail. Kind of where I'm coming from is if we're talking about devices that don't have the lifespan of the loan, I'm not sure that's necessarily a good investment. So, but maybe I'm misunderstanding what the audiovisual it actually is.
Take that. So the majority of the audiovisual is associated with the flat panels that are in the classrooms. And then there are some IT components that would be in the racks within the server rooms.
Right, so that would be my concern. If we're doing flat panels, you know, that's going to give out long before they're actually paid off. Would that be good?
Yeah, so one of the reasons actually we're going to a flat panels instead of projectors is the lifespan's longer. And because with projectors, why when we replace bulbs, it comes at almost half the cost of what the actual device is. So we can be much more efficient with the use of flat panels, much like this scenario right here. And there's clarity in the screen, much more so than with the projector a lot of times. So it's flat panels in the classrooms, but it's also large projector screens in some of the larger spaces. So I could imagine seeing some of those in the Learning Commons, at the Learning Stair in the Media Center, and then also in the Commons area.
Yeah, you know, no, I'm not questioning any of that. I'm just questioning the lifespan of that. How long is it going to take us to pay off the loan? 20 years, the bond? These are not going to last 20 years. So we're putting money, we're buying, using bond dollars to finance something that is not going to, you know, this flat panel, by the way, has not worked for the last 3 or 4 board meetings, and I hope somebody could get that fixed. But so, you know, and it's not a huge amount. I just wonder if it is better to take that money out of capital outlay rather than using bond dollars for something that's just not going to last through the length of the bond payoff.
Yeah, so, and actually, so in the original bond plan, we didn't plan to pay for any of the projectors or flat panels with bond funds, so that wasn't part of the plan. What we've been doing is planning to use premium dollars from the sale of the bonds for that technology. And essentially what we're doing that is utilizing that in lieu of capital outlay dollars and then building a capital outlay plan that would be able to sustain replacement. So the initial investment will be made with the bond sale premium, so it's not taking away from construction or anything like that, but then moving forward, working with IT to develop that in the capital outlay budget. So
Thanks.
Other questions? This is such an exciting plan, and I really want to compliment the work that you've done on especially the kind of thinking about that building as a single whole. I had no idea that there were, as long as I've been working on all this, I had no idea that there were that many additions to that building over that many years. So it's really amazing. I'm wondering if you all have talked about ways to document the transformation of the building, kind of recording its current state, and then as we go through this process, so that at the end we could have this project as something that we can share with other people in a really striking visual way, because I think the juxtaposition of the existing conditions with what we end up with when we're all done is going to be really impactful.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We think that's important too. So we are currently undergoing a process to help tell the story of Lawrence High. That's really twofold. That's a part of the construction that we're doing, obviously, but it's also about trying to record and convey the history within the school. So that's something that we don't want to detract from. It's got a long history, and it's a very important part of this neighborhood. So we are currently working with our graphic design and environmental design component of Gould Evans to see what that might mean.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Other questions? Great work. Thank you so much for the update. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll call a break until the regular meeting begins at 7 o'clock. Thank you. The June 25th regular meeting of the Board of Education. Our first item is that we need to approve our agenda.
Move we approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, we will do our special recognitions this evening. First is Junior Achievement of Lawrence, and to do the presentation, we have Julie Boyle, our Executive Director of Communications, with Debbie Harmon, Junior Achievement Douglas County District Director, and Brad Burnside, the Chairman of the Junior Achievement Board of Directors.
Well, you did exactly what I was going to do, Shannon. So
I just do what's listed on the agenda.
I represented the Lawrence School District on the Junior Achievement Board of Directors this year, and at our last meeting of the fiscal year, they were talking about all these tremendous successes that they've had this year, and I visited with Debbie, and I said, you need to come and share that with the school board and the community. You introduced Debbie and Brad. Brad is the market president of U.S. Bank in Lawrence. He is also a junior achievement volunteer at Deerfield Elementary School and has been for many years. The kids love him, the teachers love him. And Debbie and also her understanding husband volunteer whenever a volunteer cannot make it or they can't find one in time for when the teacher wants the program delivered. Debbie delivers junior achievement curriculum across the district, and as does her husband. So I appreciate both of them very much, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their successes this year.
Thank you, Julie, for that kind introduction. Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it. I'm Brad Burnside. I'm the board chair of Junior Achievement of Lawrence. I'm also the treasurer of Junior Achievement of Kansas. So it's been a passion of mine since I came to Lawrence 13 years ago. So on behalf of our board, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity this evening to share some of the successes associated with our partnership with USD 497. Junior Achievement's mission is to inspire and prepare young people to succeed in a global economy. JA has been providing for the past 30 years junior achievement programming that educates students on entrepreneurship, financial literacy, workforce readiness skills for kids in Lawrence, as I said, for almost 30 years. So in the past school year, we were able to reach nearly 6,000 students in 279 classrooms in Lawrence. With the addition of Hillcrest Elementary School this year, we are conducting JA programs in every elementary school, K through 5, all 8th grade students in every middle school, and 6th grade programming at West Middle School. Also new this year, we were able to pilot our Be Entrepreneurial program at each high school. With this additional programming, JA programs are now reaching 96% of all elementary school children K through 5, 38% of all middle school children 6 through 8, and 51% of all school-age children K through 12. JA programs are provided at no cost. I think you're aware of that. We raise all of the funds necessary for the classroom materials through a variety of fundraising projects throughout the year. We don't receive any United Way or city government funding. In this past school year, JA provided programs valued at approximately $173,000 towards our partnership with USD 497. I think as Julie mentioned, I've had the privilege for the past 13 years to teach first graders at Deerfield Elementary the concepts of family, jobs, and the difference between a need and a want. And it's been one of my greatest pleasures. So it's an incredible program, and the partnership with the school district is unbelievable. So I'd really like to turn it over to Debbie Harmon, who is our district manager for Lawrence and Douglas County, and she'll address any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm excited to be here to get to also give you the information on what Junior Achievement has been doing with our classrooms. I've been with Junior Achievement for almost 30 years, 20 years here in the Lawrence area. So I've been working very hard to hopefully get all of the programs into the classroom, and this year I'm really excited about our opportunity to open it up to Hillcrest That meaning that we're in every elementary school. So we're very excited about that. To be able to get, that's an accomplishment for me. I wanted to just briefly thank you for giving us time to, tonight, and also to quickly just tell you the packet of information that I handed out to you. The packet does also just repeat some of the things that Brad indicated today. About some of the statistics of how many classrooms and how many students we're reaching with our junior achievement programs. Gives you kind of a summary of what junior achievement is. If you're not familiar with what we've been doing for about the last 30 years, that's going to tell you right there what we're doing. Also, I have included the scope and sequence so that you can actually see the concepts and skills that our volunteers from the community are teaching the kids. We have volunteers from the community, working role models that go into the classroom and teach our programs. This gives them an opportunity to share themselves along with the curriculum, and then also gives them an insight on all the hard work that our teachers do in the classroom. So they share with the kids. It's kind of a program that kind of brings the business world into the classroom, and so that the kids can see how what they're learning in school is incorporated when you grow up and you're working and have a job. So you can see that the programs that we have, the elementary school programs, we aren't using all of our junior achievement middle school programs as of yet. I did highlight the ones that we're doing. The JA Economics for Success is in all 8th grade classrooms and teaches about careers, budgeting, and how to get and keep a job, and job interviews. And then also I had Julie help me hand that out, is we have a college and career guide that Junior Achievement produces every year. Inside the college and career guide, it gives kids all the information about a specific job and where they can go in Kansas to get that degree, what college they can go to, and what kind of requirements are needed. The kids have loved it because they get to see where they can go. We want to keep kids here in Kansas, going to school in Kansas, going to college here, and when they get out, stay here and work. So we want to give them all that information that they need so they can start making career choices early and seeing where they want to go. And then also, as Brad said, we got to a great opportunity to work with 2 high school programs, Be Entrepreneurial, where they had to come up with their business idea and also create a business plan and put that business plan kind of in place. And the kids, I got to sit in on their presentations, and it was just, the kids are wonderful, so they had a great time with that. So I just thank you for giving us the opportunity to kind of talk about all of our successes over the last few years, and appreciate very much Julie Boyle being on our board and all her support. The principals, the school district staff is absolutely amazing. The principals, the teachers, the kids, our business people, and our volunteers. We could not be successful without everyone's help with this. So I thank you, and I don't know if you have any questions for us, but I do appreciate it.
I just wanted to say thank you for the partnership. It is incredibly valuable for our district and for our students, and we are just so pleased that it's such a successful partnership. So thank you. Does any board members have questions? We'd like to have you come up and shake hands, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We should all be pharmacists. We should all be pharmacists.
Yeah, you should. It's a good career.
Okay, our next recognition is one I'm going to let Dr. Stubblefield do.
Our next recognition is actually of Shannon, our outgoing board president, and I have a few words that I'll read. While we're fortunate to continue to have Shannon Campbell's leadership on the board, she is completing her second term as board president tonight. She was first elected to the board in 2011, and since that time, Shannon has been actively involved in all aspects of board service, including member training and development and agenda planning. Shannon has participated in numerous school and public functions, spoke to staff, graduates, and community groups on our behalf, and advocated for public education issues before the Kansas legislature. As our tradition, I would like to present Shannon with an original piece of student work, and let me get it. Okay. I'll let Shannon open it. As she's opening it, I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's kind of, Shannon's a neat unwrapper.
It's fragile, I don't want to break it.
Oh, that's smart.
That's smart.
So, I'll tell you a little bit about it. This particular piece of art was created by Brianne McCracken, a Free State High School 2018 graduate. She attended Quail Run, Southwest, and Free State High School. While she enjoys singing in the choir and working with clay and ceramics, her art teacher at Free State was Brian Lloyd. He assigned the students a Koyo pot project, and Brianna said the Koyo shape reminded her of feathers. She made this picture that you'll see in a second. This picture in the image of a swan. Brianna moved with her family to Florida this summer. She told us that she is interested in studying science and entertaining the medical field in the future. Shannon, we hope you enjoy this original piece of art by one of our students, and we certainly appreciate your strong leadership on the board and as board president, not once, but twice.
Thank you.
And Shannon will, again, I'll remind everyone that she'll be the new president for the KASB board starting July 1st. President-elect. Yep. So, thank you, Shannon.
This is beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I was going to say.
I could put it over there.
Flowers smell beautiful.
Don't drop it.
That is cool. Really, really cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for the recognition, and I just wanted to say, as part of my president's report, that it's been such an honor and a privilege to be board president this year. I'm really grateful to our community and to my fellow board members for allowing me the opportunity to do this work, which I truly love. Sometimes people look at me funny when I say that, but it's really true. It's been an exciting year of growth and change for our district, and I want to say thank you to Jessica Beeson for her support and leadership and guidance this year, as well as to Dr. Stubblefield for her guidance and wisdom as part of our board leadership team. I am confident that our incoming board leadership team, along with our new superintendent, Dr. Lewis, who is here this evening, and thank you for being here, will continue to move forward with the positive energy that we've created throughout this year. I wanted to begin the official part of my president's report this evening with a special recognition as well. This is also Dr. Stubblefield's last meeting as our interim superintendent, and we have been very fortunate that she will continue in a leadership role with our district as our deputy superintendent beginning July 1st. Anna was just the right leader at the just right time for our district, and I appreciate her willingness to serve as the interim superintendent and to basically perform 2 jobs for our district this year. And I know that I'm going to presume I can speak for all of the board members in saying thank you for that. She's continued to lead our district's efforts toward educational equity, personalized learning, and student-centered support, and has been a building principal and an HR director for our district, and she's cultivated strong relationships with staff, students, and the community through that work. She continues to work collaboratively at all levels to help create a district culture in which student learning is our focus. We've made great progress this year in inviting multiple perspectives in to discuss school priorities with our LGBTQ, special education, equity, and parents of color advisory groups in our district site council. Anna is committed to transparency and collaborative leadership, and she has also helped us to continue to place a high priority on school safety and security measures this year. It's Anna's 10th year in Lawrence Public Schools, and prior to joining us, she served 11 years as an assistant principal in Blue Valley and a special education and English teacher and coach in Kansas City, Missouri. We're very lucky to have you on our leadership team, and I know that you also serve as a leader on the Boys and Girls Club of Lawrence Board of Directors, and understand that you have issued a challenge to KU coach Bill Self to raise the most funds for the Boys and Girls Club Over the Edge event that is upcoming soon. And it's also my understanding that you are planning to go over the edge of one of the buildings downtown, rappelling down the building as part of the fundraiser. So the board and district administrative staff wanted to help you with your fundraising effort for a great cause, the Boys and Girls Club New Teen Center. So on behalf of the board and the district administrators, I'd like to present you with a check toward your goal of raising $10,000 for the Boys and Girls Club and exceeding Coach Self's goal and going over the edge. And I also invite our community to lend their support to your efforts. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
So in closing, thank you so very much. I hope you get to enjoy some relaxation time this summer and some adventure time, it sounds like, as well. And we will continue to work together to move forward and keep the momentum going in the new school year.
Thank you.
I also want to invite everybody who's here this evening to share in enjoying some cupcakes from Dr. Stubblefield's favorite, I guess, bundt cake.
Nothing but
Nothing but cakes. They're really, really good. You definitely should have some. Okay. Just a couple of other quick things. A reminder to the board that we have our first annual board retreat tomorrow, beginning at 9 o'clock at the BTBC on the KU West campus. I'm looking forward to the opportunity for team building and capacity building with Dr. Lewis and our consultants from Polson Consulting and the Kansas Association of School Boards. And the only other item I have to share is that the board's policy committee met last Thursday, and we were updated on some ongoing discussions with our secondary administrators about building practices related to cell phone use, and also work that they are doing on creating a discipline matrix for enhancing consistency across buildings in the district. That's ongoing work. It was really just a kind of a discussion and update as to what they've been talking about and where they might be going. And I know that the policy committee will be revisiting that as a topic, as well as having discussion at the board level when they are nearing completion of that work. So that is all I have. All right, so we will move on to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, I have a few things this evening. The district started its year-end Skyward rollover today, so Skyward is now closed. We will use this time to phase out Skyward and transition to PowerSchool. PowerSchool's suites of solutions, student information system, registration, special education, assessment, and learning management system brings all of the informational and tools teachers, students, and schools families need to manage instruction and collaboration into one unified platform. We expect to have our district data live in PowerSchool by mid-July. We have a number of summer and back-to-school PowerSchool training options for staff, and we'll be sharing more information with parents in early August. Our main entrance to this building is now a locked vestibule. Visitors will sign in, receive a badge, and the receptionist will admit them. We also have installed camera systems to create secure entries in the Human Resource Office, Enrollment Center, and Food Service Office. Visitors push a button to be admitted by a staff member. We're working on updating signage on all of the buildings. Congratulations to Lawrence High's Vera Petrovic. She won the Top Speaker Award at the National Speech and Debate Tournament in the World Schools Debate event last week. Recently, we received an inquiry about how we determine the number of coaches for athletics. We staff various athletics and activities based on the number of students participating, and we also factor in student safety. The inquiry was specifically about high school football. Currently, across both high schools, we have 2 head coaches and 18.5 assistant coaches for about 200 student participants. The salary for assistant high school football coaches is $3,755. Each year, the additional assignment committee meet to evaluate and determine if salary adjustments should be made. The board retreat will be held from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock tomorrow at the Bioscience and Technology Business Center on KU's West Campus. Since the majority of the board members will be present, it can be considered a public meeting, although no action will be taken. Finally, I want to take a few moments to express my gratitude to the board, staff, students, and the community for being so supportive this year. When I accepted this position of interim superintendent, I recognized my decision and the board's decision to take a chance on me had huge implications. I recognized that our district was in a place where how we pivoted would determine the trajectory of our district. I recognize that we cannot change the past, but we could be intentional about learning from the lessons of our past and moving forward in a positive direction. A few days after my official first day, I started reading Small Great Things. It's a great book if you haven't read it. I decided not to look at this year as a giant challenge, but an opportunity to challenge one another to do small great things for each other every day. I challenged the staff and myself to model the things we ask our students to do daily. Reflecting on this guided my decision-making daily. So I just wanted to say to Vanessa and Marcel, who are not here, Melissa, Jill, Rick, Jessica, and Shannon, thank you for giving me this opportunity, for pushing me and being supportive. And to GR and Kelly, I want to thank you also for coming on board and continuing with that support. I look forward to continuing as the deputy and working with our students and staff in our community to continually move forward. So thank each of you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, next we have patron commentary. Do we have any this evening? No? Okay. Board commentary.
Well, I did not prepare anything because I knew that there would be a lot of, and I didn't want to extend it for a ton of time, but definitely echo both things that you guys have said about each other. But Anna, it's been fantastic to work with you, and it's been a really good year for our district, so thank you so much for stepping up and for taking the risk you took to put your name and actually take on this position at a time when it maybe wasn't the most pleasant time to step in. So thank you very much for that. You've been fantastic. We're so glad you're staying on with us.
Thank you.
And Shannon, it's been a pleasure to work with you. And I'm always in awe of your commitment to this district and to student success. And so I really appreciate you not only as a colleague, but as a mentor as well. So thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on this board.
I second.
All in favor?
Third.
Okay, any other board commentary? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately. And I will make the motion tonight because we need to remove item number 9 from our consent agenda, which is the Black Hills utility deposit. We're not pulling it, we're just removing it altogether. We do not need to act on that item. So I will move that the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda minus item number 9.
Second.
All right. Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Beeson.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you very much.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Yes, of
Dawn,
course.
you've been awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much for being our clerk and for putting up with all of us and trying to figure it all out. So thank you.
Yes, you have taken good care of us this year as a board, and we are most certainly appreciative of that. And it's been a pleasure, and we are just very thankful for that.
And we're happy that you're going to be here still, and so we'll get a
Yes.
chance to interact with you in the future.
We should probably be saying that we're really glad we didn't scare you off. Okay. All right. Our first report this evening is the high school start time advisory update with Dr. Stubblefield.
And I actually don't have anything to display. I'm just going to share where we are. In February, for those of you who have been following the board reports, a report came with the board recommended a year of planning and fully engaging our students, parents, and our community through surveys, meetings, and focus group to determine whether we will shift the high school start time to 8:30 a.m. Since then, in May, it was determined that a high school advisory committee would be created, and we opened up the applications. We had 21 individuals to apply. As per board policy, the board president appoints board members who are a part of that, and the superintendent reviews the application and select the committee members. And I actually, this time, we have a facilitator for that group, which is Christina Holt from the University of Kansas. And she's worked with us to facilitate like our community conversations and some other things. So when we looked at the applications, we were looking for a diverse group of members who represented all of our schools, elementary, middle, and high school in some form or fashion, as well as looking for individuals who could be objective and look at this as unbiased as possible. We were able to select the members. Those who were not selected will be specifically a part of a focus group because they have shown interest, and we want to make sure that we engage them. We also had some standing representation from several of the advisory groups and some key community partners we have, which are Boys and Girls Club, the District Equity Leadership Team Advisory, District Site Council, our Equity Advisory Council, Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, and our Student Advisory Committee. We're going to include some students from that once the school year starts back up. We had our first meeting, which was an organizational meeting last week, and we'll meet again on July 24th. And tonight we're asking the board to approve the creating, although we've already created, the creating of the High School Start Time Advisory Council, as well as the membership makeup and as stated on the enclosure.
And we need to do that as a board because of, if we want it to be a board committee, our board policy outlines that we have to approve a charge for the committee, outline what their duties are, and then identify the general membership of the committee. And then, as Anna said, the community members, she has gone through a process to select and appoint. I have am announcing tonight, I guess. I've talked individually with Jill. I haven't talked with Rick, but I just assumed that you wanted to be on the committee, so that was my intention, to appoint Rick and Jill as the committee members, and to forward that recommendation on to Jessica as she makes our committee appointments starting for July forward. And so that's the thing that we need to act on tonight, because we have that board policy about creating temporary or standing board committees.
I have some comments.
All right, Rick?
And I apologize for harshing the mood that emanated from there. But I do have some concerns. And I want to make it really clear, this is not concerns about individuals on the board who are appointed to this, but I do have concerns about the process. I have several times asked that the board be made aware of the basis for choosing these people, or at the very least that the applications be shared with the board. In fact, that has been our practice in the past. When we formed the Finance Advisory Council, and it was 2011 or maybe the spring of that year, people applied, board members were provided with those applications. And I don't think any, there was no action taken for that. We didn't talk about individuals, and I, have no interest in doing that now. But I do have an ethical problem for me voting for a group of people that I have no information about. And I realize that, that's where I'm at. Other people may be in a different point, and that's certainly fine. And again, I just want to really emphasize, not about these people. So I did want to point out either a discrepancy or a contradiction in our policy. Because let me read the policy. The board will determine the composition, tasks, and reporting expectations of each committee after considering the recommendations of the superintendent and other members of the administrative staff, as well as the recommendations of individual board members. And then it says the board president will appoint any board members to the committee, and the superintendent shall appoint other individuals and share the list with the board. So either that's, we're going to have to, I think, reconcile that, or and maybe we can certainly do that, or there's a contradiction there that I think needs to be addressed. So I do have some concerns about the process, and I want to make it clear that I'm not questioning the integrity of anybody. I mean, I think that everybody's been acting in really, I think, in their view, the best interest of the board and the community. So it's not about that at all. It's just really, for me, about the process. So that's where I'm at with this. We did meet, and it was an interesting meeting. I think it would be, and I think you probably agree with that. And I think, these are good people, and I certainly, when you talk about these different groups that we want represented, like Boys and Girls Club, for example, that's great. That's terrific. That's I think we absolutely have to do that. It's just that, when I've asked to get the information and I've been told no, I just have to, for me, that process just doesn't ring very true. So that's kind of where I'm at with this group.
So I'll share a couple things. Knowing that you did have some questions about the language of the policy, we did talk about this briefly at our policy committee meeting on Thursday. And from the policy committee's perspective, and certainly my perspective as board president, I disagree that there's a contradiction in the policy. Kelly and I did talk that over as part of our policy meeting. I think in reading the policy, our feeling was that it's very clear that what it's describing is that the board establishes that you have a committee. It says these are the people that need to be on it. So like in our board enclosure, 8 parents, 8 certified staff, that composition is created in consultation with board members and the superintendent. And then the next part of it that says the board president will appoint the board members and the superintendent will appoint other individual members from the community and share the list with the board. That's the process that we followed in this case. That's exactly what we've done. So we have felt like in reviewing the process in policy committee and also having talked about it as a board leadership team, that we have followed the board policy as it's written. I can't speak to what happened with the finance committee when it was created. I honestly don't remember reviewing those applications, and perhaps
7 years ago.
Right, sure. It's been a day or two. But I will say that the other groups that we have created this year, this is also the process that we followed. The board, the staff through the superintendent has appointed people to our Delta, our district site council, our equity advisory council, the boundary committee, which met recently. We had to reappoint members, and those members were applications were invited and selected by staff. And so the board has not, at least in the recent past, had a procedure or a practice where board members would be reviewing those individual applications. I did ask our legal staff to do some research on this to really get a clear answer on the privacy concerns that are involved in that and whether this is something that falls within any of the exceptions to COMA or CORA in terms of open records or open meetings. We are still working on some clarification to that. So far, the information that we've received seems to indicate that they would not be open records and that they would not be subject to an exception that would allow review in executive session. So we will follow up when we have some further information about that to share and share that with you to answer those concerns. The other thing that I can say is that if the board as a collective would like us to, the policy committee will put it back on the agenda and we will look at the policy again, look at recommended policy from KSB and also look at what, our typical practice when we review a policy, which is looking at what the recommended policy is from our state association and then also looking at what some of our peer districts do in this area. And we can take a look at that and see if there's any differences that we need to then discuss or bring back to the board. So that would be what I would, if there is a next step, that would be the next step that I would see as the recommended next step.
So, and we're not going to agree on this, and that's fine. I think part of where I'm getting hung up is it says the board will determine the composition of the committee and recommendations of individual board members. So I suppose you could define that as if we sign off on this, we're determining the composition, but I would interpret that a slightly different way. I appreciate the privacy concerns, but what I was asking was that the board be given information, so not the public, not talking about people in open meetings, but that the board would be provided that information the same way it was provided, and I appreciate that you don't remember because it was a long time ago, and I was really, scratching my head figuring out, because I know we did this, and I couldn't quite figure it out until I remembered that this is what we did with the Finance Advisory Committee. There's nothing, I don't think, in this policy that prevents the sharing of that information with the board. And so that was really what I was asking.
I think that one of the concerns is that as soon as we share it out to board members as a collective, if it's not covered by an exception regarding executive session, so if it's not something that we could talk about in executive session, then it does become an open and public record. And so if this falls, for example, if this kind of thing falls within coverage of either kind of personnel file type stuff or work product, it's not required to be disclosed under the Open Records Act. And so we need to have a clear answer to that before we take that step.
Okay.
And is that because it's not just 2 or 3, it's like the entire board?
Right.
Well, I guess it sounds to me like maybe we do need to kick it back to policy to have a look at it and
We'll be happy to put it on our agenda and look at the policy for clarification.
And because at this point we've kind of created it, it's already met. So I think, because it is the same way that we've done the last 3 committees that we put together. But as you said, in your lifetime on the board, there was another way it was done, but the policy hasn't really been modified. So maybe we just need to get some clearer language going forward so that everybody feels like they're comfortable with the process.
The last time that we modified or amended this policy would have been back in 2013, and we did take a look at it in February of this year, but I think we were looking at it more of a discussion of the distinction between standing and temporary committees and what counts as a board committee versus something that's not a board committee. So we were looking at it through a slightly different lens when we did our review back in February, but we will put that back on our agenda and have some further discussion and report back to the board.
Okay. So I do have one request, and this is a really weird request. Don, this is actually for you. In terms of when it comes to vote on this, if you could call me last, I would appreciate that, because if everybody votes in favor of this, I will vote in favor of it also to make it unanimous. Now, that's not to put pressure on anybody to say, vote a different way. I want to make that really clear. But if we're going to approve this policy, I would just like to make it unanimous. Because right now, I'd probably vote no if that was the case. And again, just to be clear, not about the people, about the process.
But we aren't approving a policy, and just to be clear, we're approving the makeup of the group.
I understand.
Yeah.
Right, and I just want to clarify for the audience members and the public that would be listening so that they understand. What the board is being asked to make a motion on and to approve is the creation of the committee with the charge of meeting during the 2018-19 school year and making a recommendation to the board in January 2019 regarding whether we should implement a start time change in the 2019-2020 school year. And then we would be approving the description of the membership, which is 2 Board of Education members, our Deputy Superintendent, Director of Student Secondary Support, an administrator from each high school, 8 parents, 8 certified staff, and a representative of Boys and Girls Club, Delta, District Site Council, Equity Advisory Council, the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, and the Student Advisory Committee. And so that would be what the board is being asked to vote on, is those things. The board inclosure includes the names of the people that were appointed by the superintendent from the community, and also the 2 board members that I have chosen to appoint to the committee. But that is not part of the motion in terms of approving, because that's separate.
It is, but it is still wrapped up in that, because there is a list of people. Ideally,
we would, the board would take action on creating the structure and charge for the committee first, and then the appointments would be made after the board had already taken that step, because we needed to move this forward and get it on people's calendars. We kind of are doing it at kind of the same time. That's not the ideal process, and it's certainly something that we've had discussions about in policy, as well as an executive team about with all of our board committees. We need to make sure that we have this type of enclosure approved. And thinking back to the different committees that we have, I'm not sure that has been done in every instance. So you may see a recommendation from the policy committee coming to do some approvals with some better defined charges and that sort of thing for some of our existing committees, to make sure that we're complying with our board policy, whether it stays how it is or we make recommendations to amend it, either way. So,
if I could ask one additional question. So, the policy does state that individual board members can make recommendations. I'm wondering how static this group is at this point. I mean, is it, having met once with 23 people or so, I can imagine that there are going to be people who might drop off. Is there might there be room for additional people? And I guess it would be for the new superintendent to whom you would make those recommendations. But do you see this? I mean, how fixed do you see this particular group?
Well, if Dr. Lewis follows past practice, typically when people go off, we open it back up and review old applications and appoint for the committees that are typically in place for a longer time. This group has a shorter window, so if somebody contacts us early on and say they can't, we definitely would probably be open to replacing the, so say if it was a parent that was a Lawrence High parent, we would look to replace them with someone that was from Lawrence High.
Yeah, my concern is that people will drop off and not let us know. They'll just stop showing up. That certainly has happened in committees.
Other groups, yeah.
So, and one of the other things that is in this policy that has caused us to have discussions about the committee structure is the statement in there that committee membership is limited to 1 year unless members are reappointed by the board, and we have not been taking annual action on some of those committees, so that's something that we will need to be doing going forward. We're not going to have all of that prepared in time for our organizational meeting, but I think ideally a year from now, in that first July meeting, all of that would be wrapped up into the organizational meeting and happen at the beginning of the year. So this will be an issue we're going to continue to work on.
And I think one of the things I know in the Delta bylaws, some of those things are like if you're
X amount of meetings and we've reached out to you, like you're kind of.
And I think that that's something important for the board to think about in writing the charges for these committees, right? That we probably need to go back and look at that, because like because this is the start time committee is created as a temporary committee with a finite beginning and end. But those standing committees that we have, we do need to have a discussion about that as a group as to how we see whether that's something we let each of the committees decide, or if it's something that we want to say, okay, these are our criteria, and if they're not followed, this is what's going to happen. So,
Definitely.
So Don, I'm going to withdraw my request.
okay.
Well, because I think I was actually going to be first.
All right. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion.
So moved.
All right.
There was,
So,
Oh, the actual motion. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh.
Started it, now you gotta finish. It sounds
I have to go.
you don't have it pulled up. I can read the text for you.
I move that the Board of Education approve creating the High School Start Time Advisory Council as a temporary board committee pursuant to Board Policy BBC with the duties and general membership as outlined in the board enclosure.
Second.
Okay. Dawn?
Ingram,
I can keep track. Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Beeson.
Yep.
Gordon Ross.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. All right. Our last report this evening is a budget update, and the thing that I didn't mention in my superintendent's report is Gannon.
Yes.
Or in my board president's report, I'm sorry.
It punted.
Yeah, Gannon 6 came out today, 3 o'clock.
They punted.
We're jumping into Kathy's report time, but they actually did what I kind of expected they would do.
Give these guys another year.
Give them time to comply, but retain jurisdiction. Yeah, it's maybe not the most satisfactory conclusion, but it's probably less upheaval for us than the alternative. So I will turn it over to Kathy Johnson, our Executive Director of Finance.
Good evening. As Shannon said, the courts did give us a decision at 3 today. It wasn't really, it was kind of what I expected, as late as it is. So the good news is schools will be open July 1. We're going to operate under the law as it was passed. No new money beyond what we've been talking about up to this point. And basically, they have determined that the legislature met the equity issues that were out there from October. So if you remember, there were some equity issues. Couldn't use capital outlay for insurance and utilities, and the legislature removed that, so they addressed that equity issue. The idea of the equity with the LOB was dealt with, and what the legislature did, and some other things. So the equity issues were dealt with. They felt like that was all good, that the courts felt the legislature did not meet the adequacy of the Constitution, and so that's kind of where they are at this point. They do feel like they made some efforts to make it get forward there, but not enough, so they will be retaining jurisdiction over this. They will require, I believe it's April 25th, our briefs will be due of 19. They'll have oral arguments May 9th of 19, and the court will make another decision by June 30 of 19. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is they don't feel like they've really dealt with inflation of what is necessary to make adequate funding for education. And so that's really kind of the focus. They felt like they've dealt with the complex issues. Now they need to deal with the financial issues in an adequacy thing. They are going back to the Montoy, so basically you need to fund it the way the formula is designed to be funded, and that will help. So they don't feel like they've really added or dealt with the inflation from 17 to 19 as they project forward. So they're kind of looking at, they owe us another $522 million How that will look, I don't know, because they'll have to decide how that'll work in the formula, if they'll put it on the base, if they'll tie it into one of the weightings, what they'll do with that. They feel like they addressed 18, 19 okay, and so that stays in place based on what we know and we'll move forward to. There were two things that they were trying to argue that maybe were not equitable in what the legislature passed. One was the minimum of the 15% LOB. Felt like maybe that wasn't an equity kind of thing. And the courts basically said all districts are already there, so there's really no change in forcing that issue, and so they were good with it being in law. The other thing that they argued potentially was not something that the plaintiffs wanted to see, but the state put in, and that is the proportionate in the LOB for at-risk transfer and ESL. And the courts indicated that it was an acceptable change. They didn't have a problem with it either direction. It kind of addresses some of the focus of at-risk funding to certain high-need students, and so they were okay with that. So they ruled in the state for both of those, and now they're just looking to meet the requirements. They're not saying that they've met them, on the high end. I think everything that's out there is kind of the low end of the acceptable funding for education with all the different studies that have been done, but they're in the low end of the ballpark. So as long as they can get there, the courts will let them keep working. So that's kind of where we are with that. So basically what we will need to do is kind of wait, and hopefully the state will give us our budget workshop dates, our forms, and different things so that we can get started on actually putting information in to get more official numbers. But we do need to readdress or visit the list of items that we've talked about, where we are in priority and kind of where that funding is, so that we can figure out what the final information going into the document will need to be. Our next meeting is the 2nd, which is not necessarily what we had scheduled for that agenda. The next formal meeting after that is the 23rd, depending upon the workshop and us getting official information. Normally, that would be when we would do budget approval for publication. But to do that ahead of you having some discussion or doing them both on the same night, that's an option, or setting a special meeting earlier than the 23rd just to talk about kind of the fine-tuning of what we're going to put into the document as far as the details. The document itself, you're publishing maximums, so you're not, the maximum is what the maximum is. How you fill that bucket is going to be what you decide on your line items. But so somewhere we need to have that conversation. So I think Anna will be reaching back out to see if we want to do that in a special meeting. It could be that we don't get forms and workshops even to be able to do publication by the 23rd, which means you could have that budget discussion on the 23rd, but we would then need special meetings like we did a year ago to do publication approval and then the final hearing approval. So we're still in limbo about a timeline, but those are our next steps in being able to finish out what we need to finish out for this year. So. Any questions or comments?
I have lots of comments.
So.
No, it was disappointing to me that, yeah, this number is fine, you just didn't account for inflation, when their own consultants suggested $2 billion was what was needed. And the phasing in, I think, is problematic. If you're an 11th grader, you're not going to get the full benefit of that amount of money. And so this is not a place for me to share my personal frustrations, but it is something that's just, I think it was disappointing. I'm glad the schools are going to be open, so we're clear about that. My daughter, I'm not quite sure, so, I think if it's the low end of acceptable, then I guess we hold our kids to the low end of acceptable also in terms of performance.
I think the court's not really able to say this is the exact amount you need to get to. I think they're trying to push.
Well, but they did have the legislature had their own consultants who came up with a number.
They did. Had 3. Each one got bigger.
Yeah,
so you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there's still quite a bit of advocacy work that board members and community members can do with our Douglas County legislators have been really great. We're going to have at least one new one this next session, so I think that it'll be really important to get to know that person, whomever it will be after November, and really share with them our own experiences on this issue and what it really means and why we have to keep moving forward with keeping pressure on the legislature to not step away from to the very least not step away from the commitments that they've already made, because that's absolutely what happened in Montoy. And so that is why we are where we are today. And so that'll be, I think, an important thing for us as advocates of public education to do going forward. And also to really ask hard questions. And this is something that that they've been encouraging at KASB events I've been at, to ask the really hard questions about education of every one of the candidates that's running for a position that you get to vote on, from governor all the way down to your local legislator, and really get them to answer the question of what their views are on things like the increased funding and whether they're going to support a constitutional amendment to try to take away the court's jurisdiction, because I suspect that will not be dead because the court didn't dismiss jurisdiction. And so I think that will be something that will be faced with having to consider again in the upcoming session. Any other thoughts, comments, questions for Kathy? Thank you very much. All right, and with that, I'm going to get to do this one more time. And we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Favor? Aye. Thank you.